Kirk McDowell, Contribution Selling here at contributionselling.com. I'm here to answer a question for you today, which is how to handle objections in sales. So how to handle objections in sales. So first thing is, let's just talk about what an objection is. Typically what that refers to is sort of a space towards the end of the presentation, right? So the flow generally is prospecting, presenting, closing, right? And in that presenting and closing space, right, there's objections. And so I want to talk a little bit about sort of a traditional approach to objection handling, and then I want to talk about an approach that I recommend, which is be quite a bit different. Okay, so objection handling. So first of all, a couple things about that are how you've done everything else is as important, if not more important, than how deftly you handle the objection at the time of the objection, right? So objection usually kind of sounds like, oh, I can't purchase that today. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I need to think it over. Oh, it doesn't come in red. I really need it in red. Let me look around some more. Let me get some more information. Let me think about it. Let me sleep on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So typically objections are a resistance mechanism, a fear mechanism. Typically, the experience that an individual has in dealing with a salesperson is they're kind of in a defensive posture because they sort of have an opinion that you're there for your own purposes and not there to be a contribution, right? Which is often true, by the way. That's kind of a well-earned opinion about salespeople, I've noticed. And so they're in this sort of defensive posture with you, right? And they want to keep throwing up stuff to slow down the train of they're afraid you're going to, have them do something that they don't want to do, and they're like putting on the brakes, okay? So it's typically the dynamic feel of objections, right? I remember selling copiers, so that's one of the things I'm familiar with. Back in the day, in the 80s, I was a copier salesperson and then owned a copier dealership. So a lot of experience selling copiers with regard to prospecting, presenting, closing, failing to close, all of it, right? All of it. So, how it usually works is, right, you happen upon this customer in some way, like you're doing prospecting on the phone or in person, however you're doing it. You finally get the chance for the presentation, discovery call, presentation, meeting, whatever it is, the interview, and in that part, you're hopefully diagnosing, right, the situation that diagnosing the problem you're there to solve, and diagnosing the person you're there to serve, right? And if you're doing that well, you're kind of dialing in what the solution is going to be. And then at some point, the diagnosis phase is over, and there starts to be another phase called the ask, the presentation, the enrollment part, right? Like, hey, I think I got something for you. Here's what I think I heard. Is that what you said? Yes, this is the problem. Yeah, this is what it cost. This is what you tried, and this is what it cost you, and this is how painful it is, and so this is how long you've had it, and so forth and so on. Okay, well, here's what I recommend. I recommend, our package number 3, and here's why. And, you said that this was important to you, and this takes care of that, and this is that, and this is this. And by the way, I don't know if you've thought about this, but this handles this whole other thing. I don't know if you mentioned that's important to you. Blah, 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 blah. What do you think? Right? And then the objections come, right? Well, seems kind of expensive. Seems like a long learning curve. Seems a little complicated. I didn't really understand, like that, right? And then the salesperson will typically try to answer the questions in a forward-moving kind of way to kind of get that yes. Get little yeses for the big yes and all that kind of stuff. Lots of different strategies. But here's the problem with all of that, right? Is that it's fundamentally adversarial. So what do I mean by that? Most sales training, possibly all sales training that I've encountered, but for sure most, turns out is ever more subtle forms of manipulating people to get them to believe something, do something, take some action, not take some action. Like, don't purchase from them, purchase from me today, right? And it turns out, I've noticed if you look, sales training is typically ever more subtle forms of manipulating people to get them to do stuff. And, our understanding of how to manipulate people has actually increased, and so some of it's kind of nasty in my view. You get people emotionally afraid and scared, and then you go for the big close, or you're asking questions and pretend like to be their friend, and then well, this is what you like that, right? So the fact that people are treating you adversarially is also well earned, completely appropriate, and makes perfect sense, right? Nothing to resist there. Okay. Now, so in this scenario, which I say is like the most common scenario, salespeople literally are coming in a manipulative posture. It's accurately picked up by the customer, and the customer's defense is objections. And so if a customer is committed enough, they can throw objections at you forever, right? So it can be an unending process, and that's their way of saying no while avoiding the discomfort of saying no. Right? As a professional salesperson, I would much rather just hear no than endure 30 minutes of question and answers, but nonetheless, right? So what's the answer, right? Well, I think it's important to appreciate a couple of things. First of all, many salespeople and much of sales training is manipulative, and so it's completely appropriate that someone might assume you're there to manipulate them. So don't get cranky about that, right? That's just the air that we're breathing at the moment. Okay. Secondly, there's a physiological thing going on that's really valuable to understand. It has to do with the way the brain is designed. I'm going to break it down in this most simple form, but there's three aspects of the brain: reptilian brain, mammalian brain, and Homo sapien brain, human brain. The human brain is the one that you're proud of. It's the one that has you be clever and articulate and think and solve problems and all that kind of stuff. The mammalian brain is, among other things, in this case, what's important is that it processes emotions, right? How do you feel? And then the reptilian brain is the first and most primitive brain, and all creatures, I guess reptilian and above, have this reptilian brain. And it's very interesting, the function of the reptilian brain, one of the functions, is that when there's a threat, right, that the reptilian brain basically shuts down the mammalian brain and the cognitive brain, and literally on purpose and by design puts you in a highly reactive state. Now, why would evolution choose this path? Well, imagine back in the day, 100,000 years ago, human beings are hunter-gatherers. Human beings were not the most impressive predator on the scene compared to lions and tigers and bears and whatever. Human beings, not fast, not scary, not dangerous, none of that, right? But what we did have is the ability to work together. Okay. So that's actually another point. So if you're not fast or stronger than the predators, right, then what's required is an immediate reaction. So there you are on the savannah doing your thing, and you spot a lion that's moving in your direction. Two things you don't want to do. You don't want to stand there and think about how this makes you feel, right? And you don't want to stand there and think about, I didn't expect to see that lion there. Let me think this through for a minute. No, what's really a good idea is to get up in a tree. Right, quickly. So that's the purpose of the reptilian brain, to stop the processing of emotions, to stop the cognition. In other words, stop all delays and boogie, right? React, right? Life or death. And so reactions are typically fight, flight, freeze, or appease, right? So fight, rah, flight, freeze, or appease, da da da. Hey, lion, I'm your best friend. Hey, let's go do lunch, right? So those are typically your four responses, and so it makes no difference. This is important. It makes no difference if the threat is real or perceived. It makes no difference. Once a threat is present, real or perceived, amygdala hijack, we'll call it hijacking, happens, and boom, very difficult to process emotions, very difficult to think. Have you noticed when you've been upset, hijacked, you've done and said things that were literally not you? Like you wake up the next morning and go, like, how did I even do or say that? Yeah, hijack. You're not you, right? So fun fact, most people try to make the most important decisions of their life when they're hijacked, when they're upset. Let's talk about it right now. No, get yourself unhijacked and then talk about it. So same thing in sales, right? When you walk in the door, hijack over there and possibly where you are. You might be freaked out about being the pushy salesperson, not being the pushy salesperson. You might be feeling defensive. Maybe you're feeling attacked. Maybe you're feeling pressure to close the deal. But you might be hijacked. They're hijacked, and boom, bad outcome. No surprise, okay? So that's just a physiological thing. It's happening with all of us all the time. When there's a threat, boom, hijack. Can't process emotions, can't think. So what's the antidote? Be the person people want to do business with. Be safe, be credible, be the real deal. Let that ooze out of every pore in your body, right? Be the real deal. Stop learning how to be a great salesperson and learn how to be a great contributor. Learn how to solve people's problems like for real, and literally be there with a clear heart, open mind, and be there in service, in contribution, if you will, and focus on your ability to be a world-class contributor, like whatever problem you're there to solve, be really good at that, and then be good at articulating who you are and what you're about and your commitment to actually solve their problem, right? So it could be a little subtle, but be the person they want to do business with. I've got some free training at contributionselling.com. It's a 10-minute video, and it breaks down a couple different really key aspects of how to make irresistible offers, how to be effective at sales. It's really perfectly designed for a business consultant or coach or someone making a living with their expertise. So there you go. I hope that was valuable. Kirk McDowell, contributionselling.com. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you.